Hi, this is Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church, located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. The reason that I've made a couple of videos now talking about Black Lives Matter and other types of organizations for a specific reason. A lot of people will think it's no big deal. Why would you talk about that? I've done a video where we differentiate between the actual phrase or statement of Black Lives Matter and the organization, and talked about why I would not be a part or stand with the organization. And of course, just quickly recap the reason I wouldn't do that, being a pastor, especially in a Christian, and also having some historical understanding of what has happened, other movements, the civil rights movement, race relations in America, et cetera, that I do not. There's a couple of reasons why I would not be a part of it or even brand myself that way. And branding is very important, and I'm going to talk about that and understanding what branding is and some of the other procedures, some of the other strategies that are used, techniques that are used, I should say. So first and foremost, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization. The founders have openly stated that they are well versed in Marxism. And for those of you who may not know, Marxism is based on the teachings and the philosophy of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. They came up even with a book called the Communist Manifesto. So communism is based on Marxism, socialism, and some of these other ideologies. And at its core, it's an anti-Christ, anti-God movement. Karl Marx is stated, he was stated as saying, or I should say quoted as saying, that his life's goal is to dethrone God and to destroy capitalism. And so that's the core of Marxist ideology. It sounds good on the outside, on the surface, but ultimately, when you understand what it really represents, and also when you see the actual execution of that philosophy, just look at Russia. You can look at communist Russia, communist China. You can look at Cuba and Venezuela and some of those countries that have implemented Marxist ideologies as for their government. And it doesn't work. And the condition of the people when Marxism kicks in is worse than before they kick in. So the Bolshevik Revolution was based on Marxism in Russia, very bloody. There's always a lot of bloodshed when Marxists come in and take over and have a revolution. There's always riots and unrest. There's always, there's several things that you see. And when you see how the Black Lives Matter movement has been moving, then you'll see that it's par for the course of Marxism. One of the other things that Marxists or Karl Marx said was he wanted to destroy capitalism because they believe ultimately that capitalism is evil. Right now, what I will say is if you study it from a historical standpoint, it's corporatism that becomes evil, not capitalism. And there's a very distinct difference. Now, corporatism is when corporations and businesses are treated as human beings. And that's different than capitalism. The foundation of capitalism helps to create wealth and those type of things. But corporatism is when corporations are treated as human beings. And corporatism is the thing that we don't stand with capitalism. But what happens is most people kind of mix the two together. And if you don't know the difference, then you can be deceived by that particular ideology. So the other part of that is Marx and Engels believe that the only purpose for the nuclear family was because of wealth and wealth transfer and inheritance and different things like that. And that capitalism was the only reason that you had to have a nuclear family. And when I say nuclear family, I'm talking about husband and wives raising children. That's the nuclear family. Black Lives Matter, which following after their declaration of being Marxist, said that their goal, or one of their goals, is to dismantle the nuclear family and to go against heteronormative thinking. Heteronormative thinking is the ideology or the thought process that heterosexuality is a normal way of relations between male and female. So they're against those things. And so because of those pronunciations of what they believe and what they stand for, of course, being a pastor, being a Christian, and also being someone who has historical perspective, I can't support those type of things. The other thing that they've said and they've stated, it's online. The founders of Black Lives Matter said this is not a social justice movement about race. It is a spiritual movement. It's a religion. It's based on a religion, which Ifa is from West Africa. And so when they say things like call the name or say the name, they said that they are invoking the spirits of the dead. That is one of the things they pray and they worship to the ancestors. The Bible is very clear. This is called necromancy. It is divination. It is something that the Bible explicitly speaks against. And so again, being a Bible believing Christian, I can't stand with someone who tells you that that's the ideology that they're promoting. I'm gonna say that again. Because I am a Christian, a Bible believing Christian, I can't stand alongside of people that are standing for ideologies that are in direct opposition with the Bible, with the Word of God. The Apostle Paul says in the book of in Corinthians, he says, "What fellowship does light have with darkness, and what union does Christ have with Baal?" And he says to the writes to the church, "Come out and be ye separate." And so we can't stand with people that are openly professing ideologies and belief systems that oppose the Bible. Now, also, when we understand the things that have helped our community or hurt our community, one of the things or one of the ways that in many pockets the Black community has been suppressed, oppressed, I should say, is because of the breakdown of the family. When you look at it statistically over the last 50 or 60 years, there's been a rapid decline in the Black family, and along with it comes the things that comes when the family is destroyed or dismantled. So restoring family and family values, restoring our faith, are things that I believe are the most productive and beneficial for the Black community. So someone who says that their goal is to oppose those statements that I just made, then obviously I can't stand with them. Now, let's take it a step further. Now, a lot of people will say, yeah, but it's just a phrase. It's just, we're not standing with the movement. We're just saying Black Lives Matter. Now, in my personal opinion, people that have to always stress the fact that Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter comes from a place of not feeling like they have power or value. Because if you have to profess something over and over again, it means that you want to convince someone of that fact. I've always believed that Black Lives Matter, along with all lives matter. God loves everybody, right? Including Black Lives Matter. And so if I value human life and follow the precepts of the Bible, then just by default, I am saying that all people that were created in God's image matter. And so I can simply point to the fact that when people are mistreated or dehumanized, that's wrong. And it should be a foregone conclusion. Right. So when we continually profess things, it comes from a place of needing someone else to validate us, convincing someone else that we count, that we matter. And when you understand the brokenness in many of our communities and many of our ideologies, it says that we need the power structure, the powers that be, to acknowledge our value, our self-worth. And I believe that as we build our own communities up, restore our families, and restore the principles and the values that kept us strong, even through slavery and Jim Crow, I believe that we will have such a great self-worth that we don't have to convince others that we matter, we are valuable. I hear some of the laws that they want to pass about hate crimes and different things like that. If you harm a human being, if you mistreat them or harm them or kill them, wrongfully, then there should be a punishment. Those laws are already on the books. So when you have, for instance, when they tout police shootings of unarmed Black people as an issue, the laws are on the books. The problem is that what narrative is being portrayed. And so if you just simply try to change laws, that's not going to stop it. It is what is it, the actual narrative, what is the story behind the story is what has to be addressed, more so than trying to get laws changed or trying to defund the police or some of the other things that some of these radical groups are calling for. Antifa also is another a group that's based on Marxism. They say that Antifa is supposed to be anti-fascism, But ultimately, when you understand Marxism, the results of Marxism are usually worse than the fascist government that they say that they're against. And so being anti-fascist really is just a uh, is just a deception, or it's like a Trojan horse, that although we embrace those statements, but ultimately what happens behind that statement, the organization and the philosophy behind it, is more detrimental than the thing that they are trying to fight against, right? It's like some of these pharmaceutical drugs that you see the advertisement for. I watched a advertisement. I can't remember the actual drug, but it was supposed to lower cholesterol. And then when they talked about the side effects of the drug, the side effects were as bad, if not worse, than the actual, disease that they said that they were trying to fight against. So we have to be careful that the cure isn't worse than the disease itself, right? What is the cost of trying to implement these Marxist ideologies? Because normally the cost that is incurred by the community at large is worse than the thing that they said that they're trying to fight against. We have a free market economy, capitalistic economy, right? We have free markets where there is the possibility for upward mobility. Like, what I mean is, if you're poor or in poverty, there's an opportunity in a free market system that you can move up and become middle class, or you can become wealthy, right? You can be middle class, and you can, through actions, behaviors, or fortune, you can move up the ladder, the economic ladder. And one of the prime examples is right now we have the NBA that is constantly touting Black Lives Matter. They have them on their T-shirt, on their jerseys, et cetera, et cetera. But the NBA is a prime example of some of the many benefits of a free market capitalistic society. So think about someone like a LeBron James, who probably, if he's not, he will soon be worth probably $1 billion. He's come, he talks about his humble beginnings, right? A single mom in poverty. He moves from poverty to being wealthier than 99% of the people in the world, right? So that's what the benefits of a free market economy. If you take him and put him in a Marxist, whether it's communism, socialism, even though he's a talented basketball player, he's 6'8", 260 pounds, can jump and can jump out of the gym and run like a deer. He was able to profit off of his talents, right? That's what happens in a free market economy. If you look at a singer or a rapper, if I'm a great singer, I can become very wealthy and famous in a free market capitalistic society because of the fact that I'm using my talents for my own benefit. In a Marxist governmental system, the state benefits off of individual talents, not the individual. There's a transference of wealth in socialism, which means if I say, for instance, if LeBron James accumulates $1 billion and he has children, when he passes on, he can leave an inheritance for his children. And so their lot in life will be so much further advanced because of the inheritance that they receive. In a socialism, they wouldn't be able to inherit them. In communism, they wouldn't be able to inherit the wealth of their father. The state would take it and distribute it based on what they perceive to be the needs of the people. And so we have to understand where we're coming from. But anyway, let me get to what I really wanted to get to, the core of this talk. Because what is happening here is what is known as a PSYOP, or a psychological operation. A lot of these things are being orchestrated behind the scenes. You've heard me. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please do so. I talk about the Hegelian dialectic, which is problem and solution. It is thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, which means that in order to move the public in a certain direction, you create a problem or a dilemma or a crisis, and it naturally moves the people to accept the conclusion that you have already had in place. Thesis, synthesis, antithesis, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It means you come up with a problem, there's a crisis that is created or manufactured, but you already have the solution. For instance, if I wanted everyone to take a vaccine, it would be very easy for me to create a virus or a disease where a lot of people get sick. And then People will willingly take the disease, take the vaccine because of the disease. If you want to take people's individual rights, you can create a crisis that makes the people feel unsafe, and then they will give up their rights for the sake of freedom. I mean, they will give up their liberties for the sake of safety, right? And that is part of the Hegelian dialectic that has been used in the past. It is reported that this incident during the time of Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin, if you get a chance to look it up, where they staged an attack on an American warship by the Vietnamese because they wanted to go to war with Vietnam. That is what the reports say. I think his name was McNamara, one of those admirals. But anyway, they supposedly staged an attack on an American ship under the guise that it was a Vietnamese Navy vessel that did it, because they wanted to go to war in Vietnam. And so the people naturally, the American people, agreed to go to war because of the crises that was created. Now, we do know that in Nazi Germany, that the Nazis used that they came up with a common enemy, the Jews or whoever. They staged some. It is historically reported that they staged some, like whether it's a burning of a governmental building or a firebomb or something along those lines, or an attack. They created one, they orchestrated one or staged one to get the people to move in a certain direction, right? That is part of the Hegelian dialectic, and many people believe that that is what is occurring right now here in 2020 on many different levels. But I want to talk about a psychological operation, or a psyop, which is what I believe is happening. I also want to talk about branding and marketing, because the people that will say, I just say Black Lives Matter, I have the T-shirt, or I use the phrase, but I'm not a part of the organization. They don't understand marketing or branding, because what you do is when you use the phrase, you are empowering the organization. When people see Black Lives Matter on the court at the NBA game and they want to support it, they're going to go to the Black Lives Matter website and donate money. And it has been reported that since the campaign has started, the Black Lives Matter campaign of 2020, after the death of George Floyd, that there has been tens of millions of dollars in contributions that have come through the organization. And so what the powers that be understands marketing. So let's talk about psychology. Let's talk about marketing and branding. There's a reason why corporations spend tens of millions of dollars to pay celebrities to endorse their products, because branding is so strong that when someone identifies with a certain brand, then the people believe. For instance, if I saw Michael Jordan drinking a Coca-Cola, then subconsciously, I'm a big fan of Michael Jordan's. I now began to look at Coca-Cola as a product that I should use. Now, people may say, well, that's your assumption. It's not. Psychologists have spent many years and many millions of dollars to study the human psyche, right? How the brain works, all the way from Germany. The psychologists of Germany and those who created what is known as propaganda. They created propaganda, or now it's known as public relations. They spent many years, many millions of dollars studying the human brain and the effects on the human brain. And they studied that in a way that they can move with what is called groupthink or social engineering. They can affect the thought process of the public at large. So when you understand marketing and branding, then you should understand that even if you say you're not a part of the organization, when you use the phrase, when you use the hashtag or put the T-shirt on that says Black Lives Matter or something along those lines, you are empowering the organization, because they've done a great job at branding that hashtag Black Lives Matter, and they own that. They created that hashtag and they own that, right? Black Lives Matter hashtag is something that empowers the organization. Let me give you another example. If I had on a shirt that had a swoosh symbol on it and it said, just do it, then people would automatically assume that I was promoting Nike, or that I wore Nikes, or I was favorable to Nike, right? Because Nike has done a great job at branding the swoosh symbol and the phrase, just do it. That is how those corporations and companies work. They have studied the human brain and they understand it. And so when people say that, they don't understand marketing or branding because it has an effect on the public. Now, 100% of the people may not go for it, but the public at large will go for it, right? That's how branding goes. The symbols, that's why they use symbols. Symbology is very important. Logos, brands, slogans, that's why they come up with jingles, and people that come up with jingles for corporations make a lot of money because they understand how powerful using phrases or symbology is to brand and to empower the company, the organization, or the product, right? But let's look at psychological operations, a psyop, if you will. Psychological operation, or psyop, are operations planned to convey selected information and indicators to targeted audiences to influence their emotions, motives, objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of governments, organizations, groups, and individuals. The purpose of psyops is to induce or reinforce attitudes and behaviors that support the policies or the objectives of the organization. Now, psyop is actually a military term, right? Because the military, over the years, over the generations, have spent a lot of time in studying the effects on people in order to get reactions, to change their attitudes and behaviors. Now, the reason the military is very good at these type of things, because for those of you who don't know, and some of you do, you might have a familiarity with this. When you enlist in the military, the United States military, you actually sign off a whole lot of your rights to yourself, which means your body now becomes the property of the United States government. And they'll tell you that, right? They can tell you what you can do and what you can't do with your body to a great extent. And because of that, they do a lot of experiments at times on military personnel. It is reported that during the Vietnam War that they did a lot of experiments on soldiers, on military people, using certain drugs, psychotropic drugs, and different things like that to find out the effects on the human brain. During the Nazis in World War II, they did a lot of tests on people and individuals using drugs, using other things. There's research that they do to actually see how people respond to certain stimuli. The military has done that over a long period of time. They've done that. They've perfected that. And many of these techniques are used on the public as a whole. Psychological operations, psyops. Sun Tzu said there is no instance of a nation benefiting from a prolonged warfare. And so what happened is the military, instead of having long military campaigns, they start to come up with psyops in order to, like I said, reinforce attitudes and behaviors that supports the policy of the military. Now, let me give you an example. During the Iraq War, well in advance of any military invasion of Iraq, the United States deployed a weapon that recognizes the key nature of human psyche to the ultimate unfolding of any military campaign. Psychological operations use information for its power of influencing thoughts and emotions. And so what happened is, before they went in to take out Saddam Hussein, they started a public smear campaign. They start talking about weapons of mass destruction. They start to come up with narratives on how horrible of a person he was, so that when the military went in, the public as a whole did not object to it. Understanding of human behavior, cultural and historical knowledge, and sensitivity and communication and technology expertise are elements of effective psyops. The dissemination of truthful information to foreign audiences in support of national objectives during peace, conflict, and war. So you have to understand that these are the techniques that is used through the media. The media is owned and operated by the internationalists, right? 90% of all media is owned by 5 or 6 multinational corporations. So anyway, these psyops that they do, and the marketing and the branding that is happening right now in America, not only has people that will go along with what is being said because it becomes reality, even if you didn't have that information or you disagreed, it becomes reality. And it also sways public opinion to a certain degree that you can't even speak out against these things. So of course, since Black Lives Matter has branded and marketed itself so well, and especially with the help of the media and Hollywood and the NBA and other organizations, that people get in a lot of severe trouble when they go against that, or they say all lives matter. Then they say, oh, you're racist, or you're a bigot, or they'll say you're naive, you don't know what you're talking about, why are you trying to discount it? When people say that, because they are being socially engineered, their thoughts have been shaped and changed, whether they want to agree with it or not. Now, this psyop that we are under right now with the Black Lives Matter, it invokes, using the media, fear, anger, and bitterness. Fear, anger, and bitterness. And one of the things that I always like to say is, as a student of history, there's a lot of young people that are very angry and bitter because of the images that they're constantly being shown through the media, even though they lack historical perspective of race relations in America. Most of them don't know a lot of things that had occurred through slavery and through Jim Crow and segregation. They don't understand the fight that has ensued by our fathers and forefathers in order to make this nation, the civil rights movement and some of the other things that have been done to give us much more freedoms. Not only did we have in the past, but this is a freer country than many other countries. I've been to other countries. I've been to Europe. I know people from Africa and the Far East, from China, from Vietnam, from Korea. I know people personally from these places, from India. I even know a pastor who had a network in India of pastors. And because in India, it was against the law to proselytize if you're a Christian. And proselytizing, for those of you who don't know, it's okay for you to be a Christian, but you can't go out and try to win somebody over to Christianity. 2 of his ministers got killed because it was against the law for them to do it. They could get thrown in jail or getting beaten. So, with all the complaints and all the blemishes and black eyes that we do have in America, we still have many great opportunities. And I believe it's still it's the greatest nation on this side of heaven, right? Even in the midst of some of the things that have occurred. But again, because of the psyop that is happening, because there's people that they're furious about things, and they haven't experienced anything like real racism that occurred in America. They haven't experienced it. The numbers of people that do experience the bigotry and the bias is relatively small compared to a country of 320 million people with 800,000 police officers. Even if you have 30 bad, bigoted cops, that's still a very small number. If you look at the amount of unarmed black males who get killed by police officers in America right now, it's less than 0.5% of all the deaths of black people, right? And to take it a step further, less than 0.5% So if we're using 99% of our effort and energy to fight an issue that only represents 0.5%, then that is counterproductive. That is very counterproductive, as a group. And if not another white cop ever shoots another unarmed black person, or if not another unarmed black person dies at the hands of a cop, we still, as Black Americans, are number one in homicide, both as the victim and as the perpetrator. I'm going to say that again. Even if no other black person died at the hands of a police officer in America, we still are number one in homicide, both as the victim and as the perpetrator. And so if we're going to spend our efforts, it should be done first and foremost to fight the larger causes of our distress. Now I know what people are saying. Even one person is too much. If one person dies wrongfully, that's too much. I will say that over and over again. That's too much. But what I am saying is that the reason that 99% of our efforts are going towards trying to fight something that accounts for less than 0.5% of our issue, it is because of the psyop that is being created. It's because of the social engineering that is occurring and the propaganda that is moving us and distracting us from our real issues. This has been Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. I love you. Shalom, shalom.